Oh man, my coffee was so much better this morning. Got my Keurig fixed. Actually, I should say it magically fixed itself after I banged on it a couple times. So, you know, a handyman at work. But I come to you with a discussion. So we all know that there's a PvP versus PvE debate within the Star Citizen player base, and we know which side I'm on, and it's that there shouldn't be a debate at all. There should be PvE and PvP, and they should be intertwined together. They should live in harmony. But there are many people who think, and I know this because they will sometimes comment on my videos, and I appreciate their comments and their opinions, that people who don't want to PvP should not be forced to PvP, and they should be able to be in a permanent safe zone while playing the game, and that PvPers can go kill each other without bothering the PvEers. And that's kind of the most extreme version of that PvE only story that I have seen. But there are enough people who say it, I feel like it's worth talking about and asking the question, should people be forced to encounter other players or even just have the chance of encountering other players within the verse? Or should there be, you know, should you be able to play the entire game without ever encountering another player? I think it's a valid question, because there's something to be said for letting people do what they want to do in a sandbox game. Now, immediately, I oppose this. The first of the reasons being the core of Star Citizen involves player interaction. I mean, we can argue about the state of the game and what game loops are in the game and what's built in and what's in the future and blah, 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 blah. It doesn't matter. Here's my question. What is the point of having a game where the PvEers and the PvPers never interact? You essentially have two games at this point, which maybe some people are fine with. Maybe I should be fine with it. I don't know. All I know is that the result of this would essentially be two separate games within the same game, which to me seems kind of pointless. The reason I play Star Citizen is because I know there's a chance of player interaction in a negative or positive sense. If I did not want player interaction, I would be playing a single player game. And I think there's a valid argument to be made that if you don't want any kind of player interaction, then you shouldn't be playing Star Citizen. Now, I understand why some people don't want any player interaction at all, because player interaction has the potential to ruin, you know, the story of your game loop and I understand why those people play the game, because there's no other game like Star Citizen. There's not really a single player experience that lets you do the Star Citizen thing. So I get why they play it, but you know, when you load into the game, the little blurb says crime is a problem. You know, beware, you're entering Star Citizen where you may be a victim of crime. Talking about PvP. The entire thing that makes this game interesting is the PvP. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I was reminded of the classic short story, The Most Dangerous Game. You've probably heard of it. Many of you probably read this in high school English class, but for those of you who haven't read it, I'll give you the one sentence synopsis right here. The story is there was a rich guy who's a hunter, right? And he hunted all the animals from little deer who are harmless to you all the way up to lions who can kill you, you know? And the idea is you progress, right? You start out, you hunt a deer. There's not really any danger of a deer turning on you and killing you. Obviously it's possible and it's happened before, but it's like a 1 in a bazillion chance of you being killed by a deer, right? As long as you're taking the necessary precautions, and especially if you're shooting from a distance. That was fun for him until he realized that there was no danger. And then you progress to, oh, let's hunt a wild boar, let's say. There's some real danger there. Boars are very dangerous. Pigs are very dangerous. And then, okay, so you get over that, you learn how to do it safely. And then what's next? You know, wolves, grizzly bear, tigers, lions, you know, you move up the food chain all the way up to the apex predator, and you feel the thrill of hunting something that could very easily kill you. But even that, they're just an animal, right? They don't have the brain power to outthink you, to outmaneuver you. The whole time you are in control as a human being, in the situation at hand. Now you can make a mistake, mess up, and the lion could kill you, but in the story, he's just too good of a hunter, right? Even the most dangerous animals on the planet don't pose a threat to the human mind. In this analogy, in Star Citizen, in gaming, NPCs are the animals, right? The human will always win against the animals. After a while of fighting NPCs, they are no longer a threat to you, and so killing them, going after bounty missions and doing the bunker missions, it's no longer fun because it's not a challenge. And humans crave being challenged, whether we know it or not. 99% of video games are just a set of challenges to be conquered, and we crave that because it's fun. The feeling of accomplishment, that high you get from completing something, the chemical reaction of your brain when you solve a problem, is what gaming is giving you. Now, after a point, the NPCs do not pose a problem for you anymore. You know, you do enough bounty missions, you do enough ERTs, there's no chance you're going to die. And that's the point of this story. The rich hunter eventually ends up going and putting his house on an island, and he's trapping victims of shipwrecks and making them run from him as he hunts them down. Yeah, it's very dark, very grim, very interesting, because he comes to the conclusion that the only humanity is the apex predator. And obviously, we can see that it's not chimpanzees who are in charge of the world, it's humans. So he, like a true sociopath, like a psychopath that he is, he provides himself with humans to hunt. And eventually the story ends, spoiler alert, with the main character of the story, the shipwrecked victim who is being hunted by this guy, ends up being able to outwit him and turn the tables on him and kill the hunter. And that's the happy ending, showing that the hunter indeed was correct, that he found a worthy opponent in another human being. It's pretty easy to see why we as gamers enjoy a multiplayer experience, because there's nothing like going up against another guy on the other end of another screen somewhere and putting your skills to the test against them to see who's going to win, to see who's going to come out on top, to see who is the better hunter. Because at the end of the day, it's the only thing that's going to present a real problem for you. Another person, that's it. There's no NPC that's going to be able to compete with another guy. And some of you are going to cite like Dark Souls or some really difficult game with really hard NPCs, but it really doesn't compare. It's beating those games is all about predictability. It's all about statistics. It's all about learning the reps, doing the time, and therefore learning exactly when to do what. And it's all repetition, and that's what repetition, and I will say reaction time, obviously, but it's all about learning a formula to beat the game. When you're going up against a person you've never met before and it's do or die, there's no formula that in the end is going to make you prevail. It's going to be who can outthink, who can outskill their opponent. And the most dangerous game, the story serves now especially to make us aware of our desire for human conflict, especially within video games where multiplayer person versus person is an option without actually dying in real life. And it serves to tell us how important PvP is in video games for player interaction, for the continuing life of a video game. My point of saying this is I think there are a lot of people who think that if Star Citizen were a PvE only game, they would have a better, more fun time in the game, and I think they wouldn't. I think there's some people who would, don't get me wrong. I think there's people who know what they want, and what they want is a PvE game. And I think there's a lot of people who don't know that they need the PvP to keep it interesting. And I think if Star Citizen were to move towards a PvE system, that you would lose a lot of players. You would lose more than half of the Star Citizen player base if you removed PvP from the equation. And that's whether people know it or not. I guarantee you that that is the case. Do you disagree with that? Let me know in the comments. Give me your reasoning. Let's have a conversation. I'm interested to know what people think about this. I'm sure that me saying this is going to make a lot of people angry. That's fine. I'm just giving you my opinion. Take it or leave it. So that's one of the ways that I think about this argument for solely PvE versus solely PvP. I don't think it should be all player interaction forced all the time either. I think there should be a healthy mix. And I think most people probably feel that way. But now we don't really have to guess anymore what the game is going to be about, because Star Citizen CIG is going to implement master modes in the game. They're effectively taking a stance now that is explicitly PvP, because it effectively makes it more difficult to get out of a PvP situation without some forethought. So unless you've planned ahead of time, you're not going to just be able to cut and run with no consequences. You'll still be able to run. It just means you're going to take a lot more damage before you're able to get out, if you're able to get out. But it also means you're going to have to plan ahead for where you're going. You're going to have to plan ahead in terms of your exit routes so that it's as fast as possible in the calculations that you need to get out of a situation. And so there's a reason that PvPers are happy about this change, by and large. It's because it's going to force people to partake of PvP more often. And so it's clear that CIG, RSI want PvP to be emphasized. I'm not saying that they want a solely PvP game, but it's obvious that they do want PvP. That's the bottom line here. And so the people who only want PvE, it should be clear to you now that that's not going to happen. And it's not part of the game. Especially with them introducing a whole new system pretty much dedicated to PvP and person-to-person crime, pirating. That's what Pyro is. Limited safe zones, which of course I'm all for, because like I said, I'm the thing that interests me is PvP. Not that I don't enjoy the adventure of PvE at times, but when I want a challenge, I'm not going to go get a VHRT and feel good about completing it, because I'm no longer a newbie, like I know how to fly. The only thing that's going to test me is another person. I think there's a little bit of a disconnect between the way that some people think about the game and the way that the game actually is. And I think that there is a disparity between what people want out of Star Citizen and what Star Citizen actually is. That's on both sides of the aisle here. I think it's a case of main character syndrome. I'm coining that term. Here's what I think. And again, this is not all PvEers. So don't at me in the comments saying I like PvE, screw you. I'm not dissing PvE. I think there is a segment of the player base that is playing the wrong game, and these are those people. I think there are people who are used to being the main character in a video game, and that is the case when you play a story-driven game. The fun of a sandbox game is that you get to create your own story, especially as we move closer to persistence and base building and stuff like that. That's going to enable you to create your own version of your Star Citizenship, and PvE allows you to be the main character in that story. In a multiplayer game, you don't always get to be the main character. Sometimes you're the main character, and other times you're an NPC, and that's just how it works. Like, think of, people are gonna blast me in the comments for comparing it to Call of Duty, but this is just for the purpose of simplicity. The concept of a multiplayer experience is the same across the board. So here's my example. In a 6v6 Call of Duty team deathmatch, there is a guy who's going on kill streaks and getting all the kills, and he ends the game with 60 kills and 10 deaths or some really good KD. That's the main character. Okay, everybody else was the NPC in that game, and sometimes you get to be that guy who is the main character, and you are the best. You are Soap McTavish, you are Captain Price, blowing through NPCs in the campaign, only this time it's real people, and you get that much more of a sense of accomplishment because you were better than actual people with functioning brains rather than NPCs with a programmed time and place to die. So that may happen to you, but the next game you might go 20 and 20, and someone else is that guy at the top and he's the main character. You don't get the same feeling. But that's the point of multiplayer, that sometimes you win and sometimes you lose. In Star Citizen, I feel like people get annoyed because they're going along pretending that they're the main character. And a lot of people are role-playing even though they don't know it, because it gives you that feeling of being the guy, being Han Solo and locking in and doing an imaginary job. Here's the scenario, right? The PvEer who has main character syndrome. You know, he's got his load of goods in his Cutlass Black, and all of a sudden he gets interdicted by a group of NPCs, and he's able to blast his way through them. Him and his gunner are doing the thing, right? They're doing the story of Captain Blank and his motley crew slicing through enemy pilots and pirates who want them dead and succeeding and getting that feeling of, wow, what an adventure. It's obvious that they were the main characters and they were able to deliver their load on time and complete the story, you know, setting climax resolution. They get out of their ship, log off for the day, feeling like they were the main character. When it doesn't work out, and these are the people who type in chat, in the global chat, angry about getting griefed and angry about someone ruining their experience. And as soon as someone talks about their quote-unquote experience being ruined, I know that they have main character syndrome. Because it's not that the game experience was broken, it's that someone else was the main character. Someone else came out victorious in the PvP interaction, and that they're just not okay with that. And to me, that just means you're in the wrong game. If you're not okay with sometimes losing the PvP interaction, you're in the wrong game. You need to go play a game where you can be the main character all the time. What I love about PvP interactions is that, yeah, you can go and feel like the main character doing a PvE only game, but in a PvP game like Star Citizen, if you go and fight off several actual players, you get an even more immersive and even more satisfying main character sequence than you would in a PvE situation. Because in a PvE situation, you always know in the back of your mind that you are supposed to win that PvE interaction. In a PvP, bottom line is generally it's whoever is better, whoever is more prepared, whoever is more willing to do what it takes. And that feeling of success that you were the main character in that instance is worth the other times where you're not the main character. And this is why multiplayer games succeed. It's because it keeps you chasing that high of being the main character when there are other real players playing the part of NPCs. And so that's why I think there's kind of a disconnect between what people actually want and what they think Star Citizen is. If all you want to do is be the main character, you're going to end up disappointed a lot, especially if you're not acknowledging the PvP aspect. Because if you go into the game expecting to succeed, but you only acknowledge half of the gameplay loop and are disappointed when you're not able to succeed at the other half, you're just setting yourself up for failure, and failing is not fun. If you're not preparing for all the aspects of the game, you cannot be disappointed when you fail at those aspects of the game. And there are some trolls who will say, oh, like, haha, how am I supposed to prepare for pad ramming, idiot? Like, that's part of the game too. It's like, okay, well, obviously we're not talking about exploits and bannable offenses, and we're not talking about, if we're going to be honest here, we have to ignore all the bugs in the game. And, you know, if we're going to have an honest discussion about the way the game is, we can't be talking about obviously broken things. It doesn't matter. The point stands. And so there are some people who play the game and experience a situation where they realize they're not the main character and now are disappointed, but it makes them say to themselves, I need to get better so that I can be the main character more often. And then there's the other side of it where people say, why are people such jerks and ruin, like I was having such a good sequence of events here and someone came along and just ruined it for no reason. I would suggest that those people take a look at what game they're playing and consider what they want a little more closely, because there is no world in which Star Citizen will allow you to fully experience it in a PvE safe zone free of player interaction. There's no world in where that Star Citizen will ever exist. So that's the way I'm coming to think about it these days. I really do want to know all your guys' opinions and thoughts. I do read all the comments, even if I'm not able to give a full reply to all of you, but I do appreciate your interaction. I especially appreciate the commenters who have the mental faculty to have a civil discourse and have a discussion, enjoying different points of view, because that's what makes the internet so interesting. And I will always encourage differing points of view in the comment section as long as they're civil and polite. So thanks for watching to the end of the video. That's all I got for you. Subscribe, join the Discord, let's play together, let's have a good time. Hope to see you out in the verse. I'll see you later.